The protocol that we envision is consistent with the Enron Intelligent Network and with Enron's bandwidth provisioning architecture, and it would be made available to all software developers through published application programming interfaces, so that we would set up basically a set of interfaces that would allow an application developer to take that application programming interface, stick it in their system or whatever they're programming, and it would access the operating system to provide them real-time bandwidth as necessary within their application. Just graphically, it would look something like this, where you have a bunch of third-party software that's being developed. They use an API which ties into a standardized method for developing the software, and then that's developing the bandwidth or make available the bandwidth, and then that would be able to access the network.
We talked earlier about the four major components of the Enron Intelligent Network. These components are the fiber, the servers, the pooling points, and the software layer. The software layer is really the major element of Enron's broadband operating system, or what we call the BOS. The BOS is really the master control system for the entire Enron network. We like to say that the BOS is the I in EIN because it's the element that provides the intelligence to the Enron network. Now, the way that we've enabled the BOS to be a control system is by building a series of software interfaces that link the BOS to all the other elements of the network. This includes the physical devices in the network as well as all the software components in the Enron network. And these software interfaces provide a two-way exchange of information. So on the one hand, the BOS can actually receive information from these network components, and by doing that can monitor the activities in the network. On the other hand, the BOS can send control signals to any of the components in the network and change their behavior in real time. So the BOS is able to optimize the behavior of the network, and by doing so, make the network available to deliver high-performance broadband applications. Now, with this broad overview of the broadband operating system, the real question becomes, what kind of capabilities does the BOS provide to Enron and to the industry? And really, we can group these capabilities into four major areas. The first area is linkage, and this is an area that we've talked about before. Linkage means that the BOS is the component that helps seamlessly integrate all the networks such that they behave as a single network for the delivery of information. The second major area of capability is utilization. The BOS helps Enron get optimal utilization from all the capacity that Enron has access to. And this includes the portfolio of capacity that Enron is building through its bandwidth trading and intermediation activities. Basically, by using the features of the BOS, Enron is able to get several times the utilization from this bandwidth capacity than we could get without the BOS. The third area of capability is an extremely important one. This is the area of quality of service, or QoS. The BOS enables Enron to provide predetermined, guaranteed, end-to-end quality of service. This basically means that Enron can provide QoS from source to destination for all the content and all the application data that we send over the Enron network. Now, the BOS is able to do this by manipulating any number of the network components that I talked about earlier. So, for instance, the BOS can actually choose the optimal path from a series of alternatives. We call this dynamic routing. The BOS can also actually physically reconfigure all the devices in the network along a given delivery path. We call this dynamic reconfiguration. And of course, the BOS can also use Enron's forward reservation system to pre-reserve bandwidth to achieve a certain level of QoS. The fourth major area of capability is application awareness, and this too is a very important capability that the BOS provides. Basically, Enron has built an interface to the BOS itself that can be used by application service providers and other software developers to develop applications. So when applications are developed that use these BOS services, they plug seamlessly into the Enron network, and then when these applications are operated, they can actually manipulate the network services within the network to run these applications in a high-performance mode over the Enron network. Now, each of these four areas that I just talked about, these are linkage, utilization, quality of service, and application awareness, are among the most important evolving technologies within the Internet community. And we believe that Enron Communications, through its development of the BOS, is taking a leadership position in each of these crucial areas.
This is important because this, I think, can supercharge the development of our business. And the reason it can supercharge the development of the business is everyone would be using that same protocol. Now, the reason I'm talking about this, you're probably sitting there going, what the hell is he talking about? But this is important. And as a part of the discussion today, I'd like to make an announcement related to the development of this software platform and this capability to access on a real-time basis broadband services. We are announcing today an agreement with Sun Microsystems that's intended to accelerate the adoption of broadband internet services as we have been describing today. Under the agreement, Sun is going to help Enron build out the footprint for the next generation broadband infrastructure, the Enron Intelligent Network, which is based, as we've talked about, on the fiber, servers, pooling points, and our operating system, which is described here. Enron and Sun will also collaborate to optimize the Enron Intelligent Network for use with the Sun platform, which will lead to accelerated deployment of this type and philosophy of operating system in the industry. And Enron and Sun will engage in joint marketing efforts to promote the EIN services as a way to address the needs of enterprises, software developers, and service providers for the delivery of broadband applications at guaranteed service levels. Specifically, what we're talking about is jointly developing some APIs, application programming interfaces, to embed the EIN model into a broad base of applications when people are developing software. So we're announcing that. I would like to introduce Scott McNeely, who is the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Sun Microsystems, to provide his perspectives on what this stuff can do and how it can help the industry and how it fits into Sun's philosophy in the marketplace. Scott, thank you for coming. Thanks. By the way, we dragged poor Scott down here out of his deathbed. He's got the grunge that I think most of the people in the country have got right now, but thank you very much for coming, Scott.
Actually, I'm feeling pretty good. 18,000 servers tends to snap me right out of it. I even put a jacket on for this event. I almost went out and rented a tux. This is a pretty interesting opportunity, and I think you see lots of different people actually going after this, trying to figure out how to make the World Wide Web turn into something that's actually usable and can be mission critical and can actually start delivering entertainment and mission critical kinds of services. We've obviously built Sun from day one with the strategy that and the assumption, the basic assumption that every man, woman, and child will be connected to a high-speed broadband network no matter where they are, all times, right? Obviously, that's a dumb assumption. I mean, half the world dies without ever making or receiving a phone call. But it's becoming a less dumber assumption every day. And building the design center for all that we do, the products, technologies, APIs, and partnerships, assuming that will happen, I think has paid off for our shareholders, and I think it'll pay off for Enron shareholders, because that assumption is basically the two companies together are partnering to make a reality, and this is a huge step forward in that direction. The other reason I'm here, besides 18,000 servers, is, did I say that already? Is that I think the philosophies here are very similar between Enron and Sun, and for a father who named his first son Maverick, I think Enron makes a pretty interesting partner in their rule-breaking kinds of strategies around opening markets up, driving the Darwinian market economy into what have been previously closed, proprietary, and sometimes monopoly-dominated, at least that's what we have in our industry, monopoly-dominated situations. And the way you beat them is to open interfaces, provide plug-in, we don't call it plug-and-play, that's what Microsoft says, we call it plug-and-pay when they do it. We just call it plug-and-work, where you just kind of plug in and everything all works together in one seamless fabric. So the architectural philosophy strategies between Enron and Sun are in the same way this broadband effort is similar to their energy utility model. Well, their whole approach and strategy of opening the interfaces and driving APIs is completely analogous to what we have done to the internet. And we now have become the #1 platform on the internet. You just don't know it. When you're doing email or doing electronic commerce or hitting on a website or whatever, you're using our technology. You just don't know it. It's all kind of hidden. In the same way, when you use a hairdryer or turn on the light, you're using Enron on the back end of all of that. We're kind of hidden. We're kind of one of these, not necessarily consumer names out there, but I think it's a natural that these two companies are working together, and we really do like the approach here. We also think that Enron does have some secret sauce here, that this isn't just a strict trading play and first mover advantage. We think there's actually some expertise here in getting automatic, real-time, dynamic loading, switching of the bandwidth out there in the marketplace, and building the APIs and the software and working with partners like Lucent to go make that happen. It's not easy. You don't want it to be easy. If it's easy, everybody could do it. And then you'd have grocery store margins. And then a web van would come along and nail you anyhow. So we think there's some significant secret sauce. We also think that the job isn't completely done, and we need to open up the APIs. And it's important. I noticed the apology for starting to talk techno kind of speak here around APIs and application developers and evangelism of and incorporation of those APIs. It's a very, very powerful movement because name anything that's not being put on a website. Stunned to silence. There is nothing that's not being put on a website. And what you want to do is get all of the content, application software, content creators, writing an environment that can actually go in and reserve and get billed for the bandwidth required for that particular application. Because right now everybody writes an application. The standard way of writing an application was write an application assuming you had some bus bandwidth between the CPU and the disk drive on your personal computer. I mean, that was fundamentally. Well, now we've got a bus not from the CPU to a disk drive that is like this far away from each other, but you could have the disk drive and the application and the content somewhere all the way on the other side of the planet, connected to your display and local processing power. And in fact, you're going to see video, full motion video, coming to devices like this. And to have that guaranteed quality of service is easy on a PC. It's a little different problem in the multi-vendor environment. So having an API that can handle any kind of client environment, any kind of server environment, and any carrier from a network perspective, putting all that together is, again, a non-trivial task. And we're very excited about working with Enron and, in fact, Enron's open approach to actually using the same process that we use in developing all of the Java application environments, to use the Java community process to go get lots of carriers, lots of competitors, lots of partners all together to jointly develop these environments so that the application and service providers can all write to one common language in the same way that Java and Genie have kind of become the common language of the internet. We will be creating these broadband protocols. We're excited they've chosen to implement that on top of Solaris as Java extensions. But true to the openness of both companies, we're not limiting it in terms of the API development to just our platform or just the Enron services. We're making it available in an open way. It's the only way you can do it. And everybody in the planet, well, everybody but Microsoft has figured that out. I think that's very forward thinking here. So we're excited. We're going to go build out the network. As we said, that's obviously where we make our our bread and butter, microprocessors, disk drives, and DRAM, and we're very excited about all this new content because it uses a ton of our servers, and we're pretty excited about it. So I don't know what else to say other than this is right on the button. This is the sweet spot. This is where the market value and the market cap is in the industry today. Just look at what's going on around the world as people are trying to put this in place. I think the background skills, expertise, and just sheer legacy DNA in terms of how to operate in this open market environment is going to do very, very well by Enron as they go forward. Plus, they have the ability to make the capital investments. And the list of partners they have there that's right on the button. Inktomy and Lucent and others are right on the button in terms of the kinds of partners you need to go make this happen. So with that, I guess we'll turn it over to Q&A. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. With that, we're done, so we can go ahead and turn that off. Let's just go ahead and open it up to questions for Scott, Ken, Joe, me, anybody. We can just open it up. Yes.
Talk more about these pooling points or clearing points. My understanding today that there's sort of a situation where there's the haves and the have-nots, and that the haves have, like MCI, control 40 or 50% of the traffic, and they don't allow other people into those pooling points. So if you're talking about setting up separate independent pooling points, how do you get that traffic that you need onto your points?
Great. It's a great question because it's a key question. I'll repeat the question. The question is that there are a number of carriers that don't particularly want Enron on their networks. I'm paraphrasing this. I hope this is okay. What makes us think that we can get onto their networks? Is that a fair question? Scott, I don't know. Would you want to take a shot at this? Or I can take a shot.
Yeah, I'll take a shot at it. There's a lot of companies that try and hold off and create this proprietary island moat mentality around their data centers or their networks or whatever, and they end up operating. It's like a planned economy. In theory, it seems to work, but at some point, the whole market forces just chip away at it. It's death by 1,000 cuts, and at some point, they just have to break away. I just think that's the wrong. That's a great short-term bet. It's the wrong long-term bet. And I don't know exactly how the mechanism always works that this thing gets exploded wide open. But the market wants choice. The buyer wants to be in charge, and the internet's all about the buyer being in charge. And maybe you can talk more in detail about how this is going to happen. But to me, it's just inevitable. It's only a question of not if, but when the wall comes crumbling down.
Yeah, and just on a more technical basis, the fact is that all of the existing large telecom carriers have sold circuits in their system to third parties. And those third parties have the right to interconnect those circuits into our bandwidth manager. So even if AT&T or MCI doesn't want to allow us on their network, they have sold capacity and circuits to people who are thrilled to death to let us utilize those circuits to optimize them so that we get more out of it. I don't know, Scott, would you like to address in a little more detail?
Scott,
That's okay.
By the way, before you go, Scott, it's better to sell your excess capacity for anything than to leave it as zero revenue. So this is just inevitable.
Yeah, I think the executive summary is that the condition already exists today in the market where every company that has bandwidth, AT&T, MCI, Sprint, WorldCom, which they're almost the same company now, and other BT internationally already sell circuits to each other and to other carriers. So all we're doing is putting in pulling points that allow it to more easily be cross-connected rather than physically using wires. So we're really not forcing something on the industry that doesn't already exist. We are just tapping into it and then we're changing the rules about how we can dynamically acquire that bandwidth and what the contract looks like.
So there's basically there's a front door and there's a back door. The front door is you go to the carrier and they're anxious to give us capacity. And there are a number of carriers that are. Level 3 has been willing to work with us. Global Crossing is willing to work with us. A number of other players let us in the front door and hook us up in the bandwidth manager. To the extent that they don't want us coming in the front door, we go in the back door by contracting with people who have purchased circuits from them. So we're in the process of getting those people locked up right now. and tie it into the bandwidth manager, and we will have the ability to switch between those carriers.
And we have already done transactions with third-party telecom companies on Quest's system, where we were able to connect our bandwidth manager to that circuit and begin switching it. So what Scott says is true, and we found willing customers that are very anxious to begin connecting us.
And there are literally tens of thousands of owners of circuits, and so it's a very effective, very vibrant market. Yeah, Ray.
I was just wondering, you announced in December, with a lot of fanfare, it was significant, your trade with Global Crossing. You disclosed the number of trades, say, in the European electricity market. What would you guide us to in terms of maybe just number of transactions? Maybe have you done any yet, or what can we expect in the near term? I had one other question after that.
Okay. Well, we have already done a number of transactions this year already. It's beginning to pick up speed. Most of the people we've done transactions with don't want us to issue a release on that specific transaction. But over time, we'll talk about probably more the volume, the DS3 month equivalents, than we will the number of transactions. But I expect, as we talk quarter to quarter, we'll talk about the number of transactions so you get an idea of what the velocity is. But it's beginning to pick up steam.
Just one other thing. There are some other players out there building cooling points. I think there's a company called Lightwave that wants to do that. Will you go ahead and work with them in terms of establishing a market? Are they competing because you have your own proprietary cooling point?
Yeah, I think, Ray, the important thing to realize is the pooling points are really interconnects, like in the gas business. So we're going to use whoever has an interconnect. The real magic dust, so to speak, is our ability to build portfolios, manage those portfolios, be a principal in the transactions, and intermediate transactions. So from our perspective, the more pooling points out there, the more switches, the better, because if somebody else wants to build pooling points, that's great. We'll utilize those as switches to switch in and out of our network. Right now, Lightwave is the only one that we're aware of that's really doing it, and I don't think they're doing it on a large scale. So we're going to deploy our pooling points as fast as we can.
And Scott is going to have to take off in about 10 or 15 minutes. So are there any questions for Scott? Focus on that. We can come back to some more questions for us after Scott has to take off. Yes?
Two questions. One, is any money or equity change hands in this agreement with Sun? And secondly, if you could postulate just for the moment that the market won't give you full value until this is carved out and separate from Enron parent, what might be your thoughts as to timing and actualization of something along those lines?
There will be money transacted. We hope when we deliver servers, they send us checks. And we do hope they don't bounce. So, but there's no. We wanted warrants, but they were smart enough not to give them to us. And in terms of future valuation, you'll have to figure that one out.
On the valuation question, we intend to get the value of this business into our stock. And if we can get it in the stock, that's the best outcome, because I think you all see the linkage of what we're doing here to our other businesses. We need to move people back and forth. The computer systems that were developed for our power and gas trading and risk management businesses are directly applicable. And you have to make some adjustments, so we have to spend some time doing that. If we were to IPO this business, you build a wall there and you get into transfer price problems, all sorts of other things. So I'd like to keep it together as long as possible. So if you, in your wisdom, decide to give us credit in the Enron stock for the full value, what we think is reasonable value, we're going to try to keep the companies together. If you don't, then we'll have to split them apart. And I'd like to keep them together for at least a year, maybe longer, to try to get the people and headcount moved back and forth. But we'll do what's necessary to give our shareholders value. Another one for Scott.
My understanding is that the Lucent Bandwidth Manager and the inter-agent software is something that's up and running and is for your intermediation business. But you now talk about the broadband operating system. Is that essentially taking those pieces and trying to develop this as a industry standard? And who else has competing standards? What's the process and timeline for getting this up and developed as a de facto?
Let me start with an answer, and then Scott could really answer the question. But if you look at it, we started with the concept of calling this a broadband operating system as a way to explain to people what we were talking about. What we're really doing is enhancing the capabilities of Solaris by adding wide area network functionality that's necessary to move broadband data across multiple networks. It's not truly an operating system from a traditional definition. It's an operating system from the standpoint that it operates multiple wide area networks and the devices within those networks to deliver a broadband experience from end to end. So as we look at that kind of concept, the relationship with Sun is to develop standard APIs that would enable software developers, application service providers, to gain that functionality for their applications on a plug-in-it-works basis, and to make that a standard approach for the industry. We would fully assume that there will be others that will write, in essence, operating systems that also take advantage of those APIs. But we would have a first-mover advantage and would be focused on the broadband content delivery over multiple networks.
I don't know any other effort of this scale with the kind of partnerships we're putting together here to go put this API together. It's a new idea. It's a new requirement that all the hubs, routers, and switches and telco equipment and the clients and all of the other components that are on the network, as well as the applications and content, have a common way of doing the metering and the quality of service reservations and guarantees and billing and all of the other pieces that you need. It just hasn't been done before because it hasn't been an issue. Because when you ran Microsoft Office on your PC, you were guaranteed to get a slow response with full absolute control over your personal computer. Now we're talking about going out over the network. I can't help myself, even when I'm not feeling well. And so this is the right strategy, and we're doing it using Java and the Java community process, which is an open process and strategy. Jonathan, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, maybe if I could just add a couple quick things. The critical aspect behind the Java community process is that experts identify an area that needs to be open and common and consistent throughout a wide variety of environments. So the way that Sun was able to be so successful with the initial Java APIs was by gathering together Hewlett-Packard and IBM and Oracle and Sybase and PeopleSoft and Bond and SAP and a whole variety of other participants who said, look, we don't want to have lots and lots of proprietary products running on proprietary operating systems. We want to have one application that can be written once and run anywhere. And that's now true in the set-top box world. It's true on the client side, running an SD browser or an IE browser. It's true on the server side. And really, the initial Java implementations were to address the applications that existed when Java first started coming out. The demand in the marketplace now by Enron, and you should see in the next few weeks additional partners coming into this, the likes of Enron and others interested in having a ubiquitous, consistent API that they can not only use in their own products, but then they can evangelize to developers. So those developers can write applications that leverage all of this next generation functionality, not just in the Enron intelligent network, but in all of the intelligent networks out in the world. So that Java community process is what allows us to begin a call for experts in the industry to have them join us in collectively building this API, and then to go compete on whoever can build the best and fastest and most functional implementation. So that's basically where we're starting from. And I think, again, you should hear more from us as we identify other participants to come join the crowd.
And to put this, one of the questions that was asked was really the timing and development stage of the software. And we have the initial level, well, I start with the interagent component. We have added onto that functionality to manage our existing network and put things across our network and interconnect with others when we're in control. The beta version of this operating system, what we're calling BOS, is out as of last week. So we can start giving that to application developers and use in the process of developing the APIs. And we're expecting a final version to be out late second quarter, early third quarter of this year. And that'll be the version that presumably people can access through the API. And that will be the, really the finished product. Now, after that, there are all sorts of different functionality we want to add onto it. But that'll be a continuing process over the years. We have some information on the BOS that we can also make available that talks about different components of functionality and timing. We do not have that included in here because right now we're keeping that kind of under wraps. But we'll make that available as time goes on. Anything else for Scott? Yes.
Scott, if you could give us a couple of your views on, I guess, two topics. First, what is a traditional carrier like an MCI, WorldCom, or Quest, which may not be so traditional, but someone who's using kind of a closed, their own private network, what do they have to do to respond to these changes to succeed and generate returns for their shareholders? Do you think they can if the bandwidth market becomes commoditized? And the second question is, in regards to your comments in the worldwide way, the cracking the local loop and putting broadband over cable and DSL and things has been taking longer than anyone has thought and not been as effective yet. What are some of your views there as to the successes of those technologies?
All right, well, with respect to all carriers out there, you've got to decide whether you're a low-cost carrier. And what Enron is going to do is basically weed out the high cost and the low cost, and it's going to be very Darwinian. And those who've got the ability to do 3 cents instead of 30 cents for a phone call or for a video stream or for whatever are going to win out. And that's just going to be Darwinian. And I'm not sure. A lot of it has to do with execution, implementation, investment, cost of capital, all the rest of it. I think some of the companies with huge market caps have 0 to negative cost of capital and can go do the upgrades. Some of you it's basically people in this room believe some are going to get it and do it right and give them a low cost of capital, and others you give a very high cost of capital and they have tougher problems. So that's just going to, I wouldn't want to predict. We're an arms supplier to all of them, so we just hope they all invest like crazy in the next generation. In terms of who wins, cable versus DSL versus wireless versus whatever, again, I'm not going to be very helpful there. I think they all win, because I think each different kind of networking scheme has some advantages. Broadband cable doesn't have a lot of advantage to me right here in this room, because I can't tether that wire, the cable coax all the way to this room, and therefore the wireless manufacturer has an advantage. When I'm on campus, obviously the broadband wireline kind of folks have an advantage because I'm right there on a broadband network. When I'm at home, actually cable or satellite makes more sense because it's mostly one-way communications, and they tend to be better at that. Whereas at the office, I may need more two-way kinds of communication. So each one has their own advantage. Each one's going to make a lot of money. And people tend to get too focused, I think, on the home deal. Why do you rob banks? That's where the money is. I think what's going on in the enterprise is really where a lot of the money is. And you got to get a lot of homes to get the kind of money that a lot of these enterprises are spending on getting their B2B, B2C, and just internal communications needs met. So I think that's where a lot of the money and opportunity is.
Scott, do you have time for one more?
Sure.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Key to most content developers that I've talked to is the control over their domain. If possible, right up to the client. I kind of bring this into the broadband question. Backing up, Akamai, Sandpiper, and Adaro each have different flavors for renaming or redefining the domain. Is that embedded in your API, or how are you going to handle that type of elementation of the distribution network?
Being the golf major, I will hand that one off to Jonathan.
Thank God.
Just for everyone, that is Jonathan Swartz, who was on the video earlier.
I'll give you the Java answer, and then I'll allow Rex to answer. It doesn't matter. The developer doesn't care. And what only matters to the developer is what's the customer experience. So when you type www.sun.com and it's delivered to you instantly, you care a lot more about that than whether or not on the way to having sun.com content delivered to you, we turn it into an IP address.
If you hold it in a pooling point, it's static, not real.
And on that note, I'll pass it to Rex and Bill.
I'm not sure that I understand all the implications of the question. I will say that one part of the tech. I will say that part of the way that we built the architecture, and in fact the name innovation, as you might think, comes from the fact that in fact the architecture is very agent-based. So basically, as we install this distributed architecture, not only on our own network, but sort of all the other networks where we put the technology, we basically, on all the servers as well as the devices in the network, the switches and routers, we have intelligent agents that in fact do collect and send information around. Among the types of information that they send are source and destination, who the application users are, what the important content is that's being originated by that application, all the multiple places that application has to go. So in fact, at any given point in the flow, in the workflow of delivering content from source to destination, you have intelligence network that allows this broadband operating system to make the kind of domain decisions that I think you're asking. Does that help?
And the goal is to build all of this in Java so that all of this stuff can run on all of these devices, and every piece of equipment that touches the network can, through the JVM, have the same kinds of capabilities around metering and reservations, quality service, all the rest of it, identically. One reference application or applet can be built for each of these features or components or capabilities and shared among all the people in the Java community process, as well as all licensees of the Java environment. So that's basically everybody, because everybody has licenses.
Is that an evolution of Java, or are you
yes.
able to deliver HTML or XML at the edge so that you can find kind of geographically specific content that's
I don't think that's mutually exclusive. I think the answer is yes to both. And what we're doing is extending the Java environment to be network aware, but you can still use the caching capabilities, and you can cache specific content. I mean, obviously you're not going to put a lot of Spanish content in China, and so you will have the ability to do that both explicitly as well as implicitly through the Java extensions to this broadband network environment. I've got to run to go do our earnings announcement, and there's a whole room full of people just like you waiting to hear how that goes. So I apologize for the hit and run here, but I'd like to thank Enron for your support and vote of confidence, and thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate it. Thank you. With that, I think we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we're going to reconvene in.
Now we move to the last part of our presentation today. And I want to, I know you've heard some pretty compelling stuff today. I know when you look at what we heard this morning in Wholesale, everybody was feeling that that was a very strong story. And we went to communications, and I think you've all heard and seen how compelling that story was. And we don't want to leave you short, because I think, given where Enron is right now in its state of business play, probably the most compelling story you're going to hear now. Our retail business last year was had the prospects of emerging as a key business for Enron. Over this last year, it has fully emerged. And if there's one business that Enron's in where we have the clear market advantage without even contest, in fact, we're in many cases the only company doing it, but certainly the outsourcing leader, it's in our Enron Energy Services business. Now, We're going to show you, this is a fairly long presentation because we want you to understand the nuts and bolts of this key business to Enron. This business is scalable, it's exportable, and it's emerged now as a very profitable business for us. I'm going to introduce Lou Pai, who's the chairman and CEO of Enron Energy Services, and Tom White, who's the vice chairman of Enron Energy Services, and they're going to take you through the key components of this very important business to Enron. Thank you.
Well, what Joe really told me was don't screw up. So on that part, what I'd like to say is Tom and I want to make 3 points in today's presentation. And those points are, first, retail deregulation, which finally gives Enron the right to sell gas and electricity to the end user, will create market opportunities that will dwarf previous opportunities that we've experienced in the wholesale side. Second, we believe that we are uniquely positioned to offer this value proposition, and as a result, in the year 2000, we will have a defining year in terms of sales, service execution, and income growth. And then the third point is, while our business value proposition at EES is relatively straightforward, we have the economic characteristics of a network business. Therefore, our future income growth will be coupled with a very high return on invested capital. I'm going to first start with an overview of the opportunity. This is the vertical structure of the gas and power industry, and as all of you know, the deregulation over the last decade is centered on generation and transmission, creating what we call the sale for resale market or wholesale markets. Over the last 2 years, however, over 20 states have enacted comprehensive legislation that would open up the last mile, giving companies like Enron access to the end user. We've divided the end users into 3 segments: heavy industrials, commercial and light manufacturing, and residential. Enron Energy Services is focused exclusively on the commercial and light manufacturing sector. We are not rewiring the country, so this is not a capital-intensive activity. Rather, we're approaching the commercial and light manufacturing sector with an energy outsource product, believing that companies in this sector want light and conditioned air, not energy and energy services. This is a gigantic market. There's over $600 billion of installed assets, most of which we think is very inefficient from an energy usage perspective. Secondly, the annual spend in this market exceeds $240 billion. The current providers of energy and energy services are quite fragmented. They consist of utilities, heating, ventilation, air conditioning companies, equipment and control manufacturers. When you look at the top 10 utilities, they control less than 17% of the total commodity, and their spread is really local. None of them have really a national presence. When you take the top 10 energy service providers, they control less than 3% of the entire market. The current providers normally have, at best, one core capability, and even with that core capability, they generally do not have that on a nationwide basis. We believe Enron is the only company out there with the 5 core capabilities needed for an energy outsourcing, and that's commodity management, control of energy information, asset management, facilities management, and capital. We were able to transfer commodity management and capital from the wholesale operations and really have only had to develop our facilities management and energy services, and we've done that over the last 3 years, and Tom is going to talk about the progress we've made in that area. Now, I know this, we've given you a lot of information today, and we've had some pretty exciting events, and unfortunately I don't have Bill Gates to introduce, but I think we have some pretty good real data, though, to show you. So if I could just grab your attention on the next couple slides. In the second quarter of 1998, California was the very first state to open up. And in that year, we signed $3.8 billion worth of energy contracts. The average duration of these contracts was about 3 years, typically going 1 to 7 years in length. They were primarily energy commodity transactions with an option on services. In 1999, really our full first year of operation, we had a target of signing $8 billion of long-term contracts. We ended up signing $8.5 billion. Now, the character of these contracts were substantially different than what we signed in 1998. These were almost exclusively 10-year energy outsourcing contracts where our customers turned over their energy operations to us. Now, in 2000, we are committing to sign $16 billion. That's nearly a 100% growth over last year. And these will be predominantly 10-year full energy outsourcing contracts. Now, let me try to put this $16 billion contract signing in perspective. In the past, we had given you a rough estimate of what we thought the margin, the operating margin potential was on these contracts. And we said they were somewhere between 4 to 6%. So if you apply 4 to 6% on this $16 billion, that means when we sign these contracts in the year 2000, we will have created between 650 to nearly $1 billion of operating margin. Now, that'll be spread over the life of those contracts, but that is a tremendous growth in shareholder value. Let me give you these same numbers on a quarterly basis. As you can see, every 2 to 3 quarters, we seem to reach a new plateau of signings, and that represents the credibility we gain after we sign each additional customer, plus a better understanding of the customer's needs and their decision process. So for the first quarter of this year, we're estimating that we'll sign over $3 billion of energy outsourcing contracts. That nearly equals what we did in 1998. They'll be much longer term. We have already signed $1.2 billion worth of contracts as of today. Now, this business has been widely accepted. And when you look at our customers, they're national companies, Fortune 500 companies. The next series of slides that I'm going to show you are not in your book because many of our customers do not want us to use their name in print advertising. So you're going to have to look up here. But we're making tremendous progress in a number of industry segments. We're signing up the key companies, and behind each of these companies are 4 or 5 other transactions in the same industry. We just signed Chase Bank earlier this month to a 10-year contract with a total value exceeding $500 million. Now, the financial institutions sector, we think, will be ideal outsourcing candidates once they get through the consolidation phase that they're going through. On manufacturing, just look at some of the companies that we've signed: Polaroid, Solo Cup, Owens Corning, Tyco, General Cable. These are all industry leaders in their segments. Now, Owens Corning is the largest of those transactions. It was a $1.2 billion transaction. But the significance of Owens Corning was that they have a very complex glass manufacturing process. And the fact that they would outsource a portion of this manufacturing process to us has given us tremendous credibility with other manufacturing companies because they trust us now in that operating environment. On high-tech, Infomart, we did this deal with Enron Broadband Services. Infomart builds these large structures that house telecommunications switching controls, and they outsourced all their energy and energy services. And we think we'll be probably be able to do a number of linked transactions with Enron Broadband Services going forward in the high-tech area. On the REIT side, let me focus on Simon Properties. Simon is the largest real estate investment trust for shopping malls. They control 260 malls across 36 states with 190 million square feet. It's a very big transaction. It's national in scale, but most importantly, Simon is considered one of the most aggressive REITs with regard to managing their income. And the fact that they would outsource energy services, which many REITs view as a potential area where they can grow income, is really helping us out, and we expect to do several more of these type of transactions this year. In food processing, we're catching the general trend by many companies to outsource manufacturing and focus on marketing. In sports venues, there are over 25 arenas on the record to be built over the next 2 years. Most of these arenas are located in large metropolitan areas and normally in downtown areas. So they will provide tremendous anchor tenants as we penetrate the downtown office market. On the public sector, anything we get in this area is more or less gravy. We all know there's very long lead times. There's a lot of RFPs. But I would like to focus on the transaction on the right-hand side, which is Fort Hamilton of New York. They totally privatized all of their energy assets and distribution network to us right in the heart of Con Ed's service territory. So we now have a mini utility right in the middle of Con Ed's service territory. It was a very small transaction, but the DoD has an initiative to privatize every single military base over the next 2 years. And when they announced the Fort Hamilton transaction, they referred to it as the Enron solution. So we expect some upside. Again, anything we get in this area we view as gravy. Again, when you look at the customers that we signed, this is clearly not a niche business. We don't have some special hook to get companies to outsource. In fact, what we said before is we're catching the trend of a number of companies to outsource non-core capabilities. And energy, for many of the companies in the commercial light manufacturing sector, energy is non-core. And we're having a lot of success, and we expect that to continue going forward. Now, we've joked a lot about our use of TCV and so forth, but we are now in a position to show you that our total contract signings will equate to revenue growth as well as income growth. And so I'd like to focus a little, finally, on our financial performance. Let me start first with revenues. In 1999, we grew revenues by over $700 million. If you look over at the operating expenses, our operating expenses rose only by $17 million. These operating expenses include depreciation, but do not include cost of goods sold. What we're saying here is that we think we've got an organization, infrastructure built that is highly scalable. In 2000, we estimate that we will have revenues in the $2.7 billion range. And again, operating expenses is scheduled only to go up about $10 million. I think that's a fairly powerful statement with regard to the scale advantages associated with EES. The other area that I'd like to point out is of the $2.7 billion in revenues, over 70% of those revenues are coming from contracts that we signed in 98, 99, and the early part of 2000. So these are contracts that are already there. We're not dependent upon the $16 billion of contracts that we expect to sign in 2000 to attain these numbers. As Jeff mentioned earlier today, we said we were going to be profitable by the fourth quarter of last year. We were. We reported EBIT earnings of $7 million, which was a little bit higher. That resulted in a cumulative loss in 99 of $68 million. Last year, we also forecasted, in addition to breaking even or being profitable in the fourth quarter, is that we would make $50 million in 2000. We're raising those estimates 50% to $75 million. I think the biggest, the most significant point of this is that we have a $143 million swing in operating earnings between 99 and 2000. And as you can see, we're starting to stair-step our income growth. What we said all along is when we sign these long-term contracts, we're using accrual accounting. It took us a while to sign up enough critical mass in the long-term contracts to cover our operating expenses. But once we reached that critical mass and could cover our operating expenses, every incremental contract that we signed thereafter should be additive to income. And you're going to start seeing this effect going forward. Now, Joe mentioned that what we were going to try and do is tell you exactly how we operate this business and really kind of reveal and open up the kimono for the first time, because in the past we've talked about the retail business being big, and trust us, we're going to figure out a way of solving this, this puzzle. But now we're going to show you exactly what we're doing. When you look at a typical energy outsourcing product between a manufacturing company and a shopping mall, it's very customized, obviously. The contract that we structure for General Cable is a heck of a lot different than the contract that we structure for Simon Properties. However, behind every single one of these outsourcing contracts are three basic building blocks: commodity, labor, and assets. And the percentages that I've laid out on this chart represent what we think is the industry average. Our average is not quite this way. It's probably more heavily weighted towards commodity, but we're gradually increasing our asset, which we would call our service mix, and probably will be at a 50% level sometime next year. So we look at the three building blocks, and we go to each company, and we do an audit of their energy and energy services expense. This audit, in almost every company we've dealt with, is the first time anybody in that organization got a complete handle on what they were spending for electricity, gas, energy services, labor, and so forth. Okay? So this is what we estimate is their baseline costs. Then we identify the savings that we think we can attain in the three building blocks: commodity, labor, and assets. In commodity, we feel we can lower their prices in deregulated markets, intervene on their tariffs in the regulated markets. In labor, we can bring best practices. In assets, we can install better equipment, greater efficiency, change operating practices. We divide the savings between known savings and potential savings. The known savings are savings we know going in that we can attain. All right? Now, what I've done in this chart is on the right-hand column, I've flipped that chart. So now the known savings and the potential savings are on the bottom, and the optimized economics is on top. But it's basically the same chart. It's just been flipped. Our outsourcing contract guarantees a certain amount of savings that are below the known savings. So therefore, we know we have an operating margin. And our ability to grow that margin is a function of how much we can penetrate the potential savings, often which in contracts we share with our customer. Now let me give you examples, just anecdotal examples of savings that we can bring in each of the three building blocks. And I'll start with commodity. What we found is even in the regulated states, or the states that have enacted some kind of comprehensive legislation, but it's a very slow implementation process, our tariff intervention has been able to reduce tariffs for our customer class. We have used substation construction, the threat of substation construction, the threat of bypass, the aggregation of meters, various techniques to get lower tariffs for our clients. And in many instances, we've been able to bring greater savings in the regulated states than in the deregulated states, primarily because of stranded cost. In the states that are deregulated, we toll gas and electricity, the deregulated commodity. We think there are going to be greater savings going forward, especially as stranded cost rolls off. And as all of you know, California, when they first enacted their deregulation, they assumed it would take 5 years for stranded costs to roll off. So San Diego Gas and Electric rolled off last year. PG&E is expected to roll off this year. This is almost 3 years sooner than anyone forecasted. So we're going to see some effects in the delivered price of electricity in California going forward. Our savings on the commodity side are not just straightforward. We're also able to take advantage of what we call price arbitrage. And this was a chart that was fairly similar to what was shown this morning on the wholesale side. And basically, it lays out the interstate natural pipeline grid, and it takes in it certain gas trading hubs on that grid. Now, it's very apparent that at each of these hubs, there's almost total price transparency, which means that it's very difficult to buy and sell natural gas and make a margin. But what we've seen is that there are price discrepancies between the hubs, between the cash price and the futures price, between the cash price and futures price and storage costs and so forth, that allow us to arbitrage that difference and increase our margins. In the 1996 Analyst Conference, I used this chart to describe an example of gas arbitrage. Historically, the price differential between Texas and Louisiana is relatively flat, and in fact, Texas is somewhat higher than Louisiana generally. But in the winter of 95 and 96, it was extremely cold in the East Coast and extremely mild in Texas. And that created a tremendous basis spread between Texas prices and Louisiana prices. And the example I had was Houston Ship Channel, which we operate as a major part off Houston Pipeline. The typical price differential between the Houston Ship Channel and the Tennessee Pipeline East Louisiana leg was a negative 5 cents. So that meant prices in the Houston Ship Channel typically were 5 cents higher than in Louisiana. But during this period of time, that differential blew out, and prices went up as high as $1.33. So that means we were able to take gas that we normally sold in Texas, ship it to Louisiana, and make what normally was a 2 or 3 cent margin and turn that into a $1.33 margin. Now that arbitrage does not reoccur very often. In fact, this arbitrage hasn't reoccurred in the last 4 years. But other arbitrage opportunities do appear, and they may not be as great, but they appear on a very regular basis. And there's a phenomenon out there that I call the recurring nature of non-recurring events. And that's what happens. So while the absolute margin in this business may be relatively low, if you can take advantage of the arbitrage, you can greatly increase the margin part of this. Now, let me show you how this works with regard to the retail market. Now I've laid on the power grid, and again, we've put on the power trading hubs. And again, there's price transparency in the power trading hubs. But you have arbitrage opportunities between power, and now you have arbitrage opportunities between gas and power. And let me just show you an example of the arbitrage between gas and power. In the first scenario, we have a long-term contract with an independent power producer. We're selling that gas under long-term contract for $3 an MCF. The power producer is generating electricity and selling to the local utility at $30 a megawatt hour. The winter gets very cold, gas prices in the market areas shoot up, electricity prices, which generally don't track cold weather, stay relatively constant. What we do is we go to the independent power producer, we say, look, let's redirect the gas we were going to give you, sell it to the open market for $10. You stop generating electricity, we'll go to the open market, buy electricity, and give it to the utility in lieu of the contract that you were providing under your generation, and split that arbitrage difference. This happens really quite frequently, and you can see it in a lot in the gas and power arbitrage. Now, what happens when you overlay an additional commodity is that the number of arbitrage opportunities go up exponentially. So what does that relate to retail? When you put on the retail points, you can see the increase in the network density and our opportunity to take advantage of price arbitrage. It just continues to, again, grow on an exponential basis. Let me just give you one illustration of a price arbitrage in retail. Everyone knows and understands the California PX system. It's intended to create price transparency. However, what people don't realize is that you don't have to use the PX to serve your end-use customer. In fact, you can go out and buy electricity outside of California and wheel it into the state. Now, California has what is called a postage stamp intrastate transmission rate. So that means no matter where you buy electricity, you can wheel it in-state to your client and pay the same price. So that gives us the ability to buy our electricity either at the Cobb, California-Oregon border, or Palo Verde, and buy at those points when they're below the PX price and arbitrage that price differential. So this is an illustration, again, of our ability to add margins by being able to control the commodity, gas and electricity, on a nationwide basis. The most significant part of retail arbitrage is you just can't set up a desk and take advantage of it like in the wholesale side. You've got to serve the end user. You know, the gas buyer for Owens Corning is not out there every day looking for the best price. Certainly the gas buyer or the power buyer for Simon is not there buying and selling electricity. Even when this market becomes totally deregulated, you will have to serve the end user in order for you to accomplish this price arbitrage opportunity. So those are some of the savings we can get on the commodity side. On labor, this is a situation where two companies were operating independently. They had their own maintenance professionals located on site. Both companies ended up outsourcing their operations to us. Instead of having localized maintenance, we centralized it, used a mobile dispatch force, and were able to significantly reduce the amount of labor utilized in maintaining these plants. On assets, which is the third building block, again, as I said, we're signing manufacturing companies. They differ from shopping malls. The asset mix is radically different. Even within manufacturing, a cable manufacturer is different than a food processor. But when you look at the asset base that actually consumes energy, there's really only 6 types of assets. That's cooling, lighting, plugs, steam, electric motors, and compressed air. So they're very easily definable. There's a component way of building up on the cost side. We're not guessing. So when you take cable manufacturing, you can divide up and break down their manufacturing processes and identify what energy usage is for compressed air, electric motors, and lights. Now let's just focus on cooling. In this example, we're going to focus on cooling for the cable manufacturer. What we do is we merely identify potential savings opportunities that we can create by better running the asset base of the cooling side of this cable manufacturer. So in this case, they had 2 1,000-ton chillers. They were 20 years old, perfectly functional but inefficient. Their existing energy bill was $1 million a year. We decided to install 2 new 600-ton chillers. We reduced the capacity on all the pumps and fans. We redesigned the ductwork, and the net result was we were able to reduce their total energy bill by half. The capital return on that project was over 30%. So that means that you could afford to invest all that capital, pay it off at a 10% cost of capital, and still have significant savings for that customer. Obviously, our ability to sign contracts and initiate the type of savings I've talked about are dependent on service delivery. And I think what Tom, and I'm going to turn this over to Tom, and I think Tom will show you that our service delivery capabilities, which could have been a problem for us, we now view as a competitive advantage. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Now let me talk about our service delivery capability to deliver the outsourced product that Lou talked about. We've organized the platform into 3 interrelated tiers. At the top, our 8 district offices connect our sales, our risk management, and other EES service delivery groups with our local customer sites. The 250 professionals that man these offices deliver services that range from front-end development engineering work to account management on a regional basis. Their overall focus is to optimize the operation of the customer's private utility that Lou talked about. You can expect us to add more districts and more people as our customer base expands. The other half of our in-house team is Enron Facility Services, a group of companies that includes 4,500 employees covering more than 6,000 customer sites. EFS provides grassroots energy services to EES and to third parties as well, and I'll give you a little more detail on EFS in just a moment. Third, and this is news this afternoon to the audience, we are affiliated on an exclusive basis with the industry's largest asset risk insurer, Hartford Steam Boiler, which brings operational data on over 3 million customer sites, 1,700 field engineers to our platform on an exclusive basis. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. We tie the entire platform together with energy information that we brought together in a combined asset and labor risk management database that we think represents a significant competitive advantage. Our in-house team, combining those district execution offices and our Enron facility services location, gives us coverage right now of 24 of the largest 25 metropolitan areas in the country where commercial light industrial customers tend to congregate, as indicated on this map. They give us a nationwide service delivery capability to go along with our national commodity capability in support of our energy outsource product. Expect us to add more district locations and add additional companies through acquisition to Enron Facility Services, again, as our customer base expands. Let me talk just a minute about Enron Facility Services. In 1998, we acquired a group of companies that are best in class at providing energy services to the private utility of our customers. Collectively, we call this group Enron Facility Services, and they provide us with the following nationwide capabilities. First, mechanical and electrical construction. Our companies Limbach, Willard, and PBM give us best-in-class design-build capability to construct and operate energy efficiency projects. These companies bring us pricing and execution expertise, as well as extensive customer relationships in their market areas. HVAC services, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning services, and franchising. Through our in-house team and 138 Link franchisees across the country, we provide a standard delivery HVAC maintenance product to over 6,000 sites. The franchise network provides us with delivery capability in every major market in the country. Finally, the other critical skill to support our outsource is facilities management. Affiliated Building Services is a premier FM company with over 70 million square feet under management, including the Atlanta Airport, which some of you fly through, and marquee companies like Compaq. ABS brings critical workforce management skills to our outsourced product and instant credibility with our potential customers. We bought and have improved each of these businesses to give us a complete understanding of how our customers' private utility is designed, built, operated, and maintained. We expect 30% same-store growth in earnings from EFS this year, driven by increased third-party sales as well as incremental business from our outsourced sales. We'll continue to expand the EFS platform through additional acquisitions. We bought PBM, which is based in Washington, D.C., with capabilities in Baltimore and Richmond, Virginia. We added them at the start of the year, and we'll expect to add 3 or 4 more companies to this platform as we go forward. When you look at our customer sites and overlay them with our service delivery capability, you begin to appreciate the scale opportunities that Lou has mentioned and the advantages and efficiencies associated with those scale opportunities. And Lou will talk more about that later in the briefing and the advantages we expect to gain from that. Now let me talk just a minute about our exclusive arrangement with Hartford Steam Boiler. In order to supplement our in-house asset risk management capability, we've gained access to the energy expertise of HSB on an exclusive basis. Simply put, if you are not familiar with them, HSB is the dominant equipment breakdown insurer in the planet, really. With 1,700 field engineers serving 770,000 customers, 3 million sites, all connected with web-based information, HSB brings unmatched scale and expertise to our service delivery network. We now have worked with HSB for roughly 6 months. The deal gives us access to their performance database, use of their engineers, use of their information systems, and extensive technical assistance. Further, we're using HSB's web-based vendor dispatch management system to improve our timeliness and reduce costs on our breakdown repairs. We are absolutely delighted that we have HSB on the Enron team. So if you look at that customer execution platform and you look at the bottom tier, we've tied all that together with a web-based asset and labor database. The combination of our in-house systems with those of HSB give us a proprietary energy database that represents a sustainable competitive advantage. It allows us to price and manage assets and labor risk far more accurately than any competitor. Customer satisfaction. Lou said earlier that our customers in the retail energy business are our credentials. We sell long-term energy relationships, not the transaction-based business that you see on the wholesale energy business. And consequently, the accurate measurement and management of customer satisfaction is absolutely fundamental to our business. To accomplish this, we've developed a web-based interactive system that provides real-time feedback by individual customer and customer class. The chart here shows that we are at or above what we call our referral threshold in both our commodity customers and our outsource customers. Further, over 91% of all of our customers cited above would give us upsell opportunities and strongly refer us to other potential customers. To reinforce that point, we put together a short video that highlights comments from our key customers. Owens Corning, a light manufacturer of fiberglass insulation materials. Simon, with the largest shopping mall REIT in the country. Cal State University System, in this case, a California customer. And BICC General, a producer of communications cable. As Lewis said, these customers that you are about to see are our credentials in the retail business. Thanks.
Energy costs for us are around $250 million a year cost. We're also a 24-hour-a-day operation, so reliability of our energy is critically important to us.
Equally important is taking advantage of the opportunities for efficiencies and better buying power in the energy area. But we don't have the people to do that, and it didn't make any sense to us to go in that direction.
We also were in a situation where we had more places to spend our capital money than we had capital money.
We wanted to find someone who could play big and move fast.
The attitude of Enron in terms of deal-making, speed, and execution was very important to us.
But I believe that the heart of this issue of partnership is to get me out of the business of worrying about energy management so that I can focus on what we do and what our customers pay us to do.
I think that Enron is very well positioned to grow with Owens Corning as we grow our businesses in Canada, as we grow our businesses in Europe. Enron already has business in both of those locations. So any kind of a move in those regions would not be a brand new learning experience for Enron. By starting here in the U.S., Enron has quickly, and I mean very fast, learned our company, learned how we get things done. And with that knowledge and their presence in these other locations, I think those two, in combination with our strong desire to start to get benefits in those regions, I think they'll be in a perfect position to help us grow.
Our first joint investment is in Brazil, and the basic idea behind it was an idea that came from Enron, not from us, and it's terrific. In fact, I think we're going to spread that concept around to several other facilities.
This arrangement allows us to continue to reduce our costs, continue to be more productive without a full drain of cash assets. It really extends the things that we can do to make ourselves one of the most profitable companies in this particular industry.
Looking at Enron Corporation, I would want to keep my eyes on them in all of their businesses with all of their customers. If they're moving as fast as they're moving with us, you're not going to want to take your eyes away from that corporation too long, because you may miss something and miss the boat.
Our company has grown significantly over the past 5 years. In 1993, when we went public, we had 114 properties. Now we have about 260 properties. We've gone from existing in 29 states. We now have operations in 36 states across the country. Historically, we have operated and managed the energy acquisition and energy management businesses internally. But as we grew our company, we realized that that was not our core expertise. We were very deliberate about our search with respect to trying to find an energy partner. What we wanted to do was make sure we not only achieved as many savings as possible, as early as possible, but we also wanted to make sure we were protected in terms of our operating margin. And working with Enron, we believe, will cause us to meet those goals. So it's not a matter only of fundamental dollars and cents savings, it's a matter of looking at the upside opportunity by associating with someone in a deregulated market. We like the way they approach the business. We think that there's a good synergy there, a good chemistry there. We also know that they are interested in growing their market share. So we expect that we'll be able to help them do that. We expect also that they will succeed at that because we think they have the expertise and we know they have the appetite. I think the best way to get to know what Enron is all about is to spend time with their people. And when you spend time with their people, you will find that several things are true. And we found that these were some of the things that energize us. They're very professional. They are absolutely committed to being the best in their business. And they will expend great energy, great amounts of time, and really, really focus on the needs of their clients.
California State University has 23 campuses and over 54 million square feet of space that needs energy. One of the big costs to operate this system is the cost of energy. What attracted us to Enron was their capacity to help us beyond just the purchase of energy. Enron has an enormous capacity, a technical capacity, a capacity to analyze the resources and how we're using them, and also a capacity to help us with the regulatory problems of deregulation in California. Enron is one of the few companies in the world that has the financial, technical, and regulatory resources that could possibly help the California State University and the University of California system. Enron Energy Services, in addition to assisting all of our campuses in the purchase of electricity as a commodity, has helped us build a strategic plan for all 23 of our campuses. That strategic plan focuses on the efficient use of power, the conservation of electricity, and making it possible for our universities to continue to conserve and save money. We're very pleased with the energy savings in the first year. We saved 5% on energy, but we also saved $3.5 million on our budget bottom line. Those resources will allow us to reinvest in the California State University. The beginning of this partnership between Enron, the California State University, and the University of California might be described as being rocky in the beginning, but it's turned out to be a fantastic relationship. That rocky beginning was a part of us learning how to deal with a major corporation. Also, the energy deregulation business in California, while statutorily it was done, there was a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot, and so the devil was in the details. And as those details became clear, Enron got better and better and saw themselves as a partner with the California State University and the University of California. Frankly, we didn't feel like a customer, we felt like a partner with Enron and the resources and the staff that they put behind this project.
Bottom line, the reason we went with Enron was flexibility, innovativeness, and the willingness to design a program that met our needs. Our relationship with Enron has been for the last year and a half. During that time, Enron has invested in energy infrastructure improvements, and at the same time, they've returned in excess of $1 million of savings to us while relieving us of the need to manage energy internally. Had Enron not financed the capital energy infrastructure projects as part of the energy savings program, we would not have installed many of the lighting projects because they would not have met our internal rate of return. Those projects, however, have been very valuable as they've increased employee morale and they've improved the general appearance of the plant. They've also made several gains for us with utility representation. They supply electric in California and they will supply gas and electric in other locations. They've really provided an excellent mixture of projects and demand-side representation. When we started our relationship with Enron, we were known as General Cable. We had 15 manufacturing locations and 5 distribution centers primarily in the United States. In June of 1999, we acquired the energy cable businesses of BICC and changed our name to BICC General. We now have 59 manufacturing locations in 19 countries. Our satisfaction with Enron's performance is best seen by the fact that we have twice, since the inception a year and a half ago, expanded Enron's role. The first time we expanded the program was when we added plants we had acquired in North America. The second time was when we added plants we had acquired in Europe. Enron was able to work through those. Enron had a good team in Europe, and they worked with our leadership in Europe to design and customize the program to meet our needs. We're very happy with Enron. The relationship has been excellent. We believe that the more Enron understands our business and the more we understand Enron's capabilities, that we'll be able to find more opportunities to save and expand. My personal feeling is that it's an excellent product. I think everybody wins. Our shareholders win, our plant management wins, our employees win, and I win because I have less I have to worry about.